Hello, my name is Borja Herce, and I am going to present work that I have been doing together with Balthasar Bickel. We'll be talking about the quantitative detection of cognacy in the predictive structure of inflection classes, Romance conjugations against the broader typological variation. And this is the plan for today. So a little bit of background on information theory and the analysis of inflection class systems, and then the core of the talk. So we'll be asking whether this is a useful approach for diachronic research. And to answer this question, we will be looking at Romance conjugations and how they compare against the whole domain of variation in inflection class systems across languages, in genetically unrelated languages. And we will finish by reiterating the findings and presenting some ideas for future research. So morphologists for a long time have considered or have regarded inflectional systems and paradigms as predictive webs. So in the words of Matthews, one inflection tends to predict another. And you can see this in this toy example of the Spanish conjugation that I have here. So the third singular present suffix can predict the second singular present suffix. So e predicts s, or as predicts a. And this works some of the time, a lot of the time. Sometimes it does not work, like s can no longer predict very well what will be the first singular suffix. These are the type of predictive relations that have kept morphologists busy for a long time. And in the last years, they have been studied more and more from the perspective of information or set theory. And measures from these domains have started to be applied to the analysis of predictability relations within the paradigms. Measures like conditional entropy or static or dynamic principal parts or distillations. I don't have time, unfortunately, to describe what each of these different metrics captures. And I encourage you to look at the literature that I cite here if you want to know about the details. Now, the question that we will be focused on here today is whether these metrics or this overall quantitative approach is useful in diachronic research. And there is very little literature that has pursued this. The closest thing that I'm aware of is a paper by Stump and Finkel, where they compare the profile according to these metrics of the Sanskrit nominal inflection system and the Latin nominal inflection system. And they realize that for most of the metrics they look at, or for most of the aspects they survey, these two languages, these two systems end up being quite close together relative to the whole range of variation that inflectional systems can take in unrelated languages. They themselves don't make any reference to the reason why of this similarity, but it's plausible, right, that this might be due to the cognacy of the two systems. So Sanskrit and Latin declension go back to Indo-European declension that maybe was 2000 years before or whatever, and some of this may be preserved in the daughter languages. So our question will be, do these predictability metrics indeed preserve a phylogenetic signal? And we will try to answer this question by looking at Romance conjugations. So Romance is an ideal test case because, well, it has enough varieties that are well documented. It has a very well understood history. And we assembled a database of whole paradigm cognates, of verb paradigm cognates from all these different sources. And we ended up with 100 cognate paradigms from 7 different Romance varieties, and these are in phonological form. And we calculated all these entropy metrics for the forms in the paradigm that are cognate. So tenses come and go. We wanted to focus on how the different aspects change diachronically, and so we will be focusing on those tenses and forms in the paradigm that are cognate. Now, to calculate the metrics, we needed to segment all these hold words into stem and suffix, and we tried different segmentation criteria, and this didn't affect the results. We went then and calculated all these different metrics in Stump and Finkel for our Romance conjugations, and then we compared these to a sample of mostly genetically unrelated inflectional systems from around the world, 37 languages in total from 23 stocks. This is the list of languages that we used as the control sample and the sources that we used. And this is what the data look like. So you have there Romance in red, unrelated inflection class systems in blue. And if you eyeball across the metrics, you will notice that for most of them, either the means or the metric or the variances, sorry, are different in Romance as they are in the control sample, which suggests that there is some sort of phylogenetic signal there, right? There are differences between different metrics. So some of them, like cell predictability here and distillations here, are, well, have less variance in Romance. Others have more, like number of signatures here, or density of dynamic or static principal parts. Of course, if the metrics that are most dispersed in Romance, we would regard them as more diachronically unstable. So there would be differences in this regard. But overall, and when we look at all the metrics together, we did a principal component analysis, and we did find out that, as the previous graphs already showed or suggested, Romance conjugations, these inflection class systems that are cognate, do tend to cluster in a comparatively small range compared to the whole space or design space of unrelated inflection class systems from around the world. So the overall conclusion then is that these metrics, or at least under the right circumstances, are able of preserving this phylogenetic signal or some signal about system cognacy. Now, if this holds against other language families, then this means that metrics like these, or these approaches, could be harnessed by historical linguists to inform debates on the cognacy and genetic relationship of specific subsystems, be these tenses or inflection classes or languages. We refer to cases like these. So these are two Otto-Manguian languages, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 years removed. We obviously know way less about the history of these languages, and they have a lot of tenses, a lot of different inflection classes. And so and because they are very far diachronically, it's very hard to tell which tenses are cognate with each other, which inflection classes are cognate with each other. And there is way too many different possible combinations for linguists to go about this in a traditional way, so by hand. And we believe this approach that we are trying here would be very useful to signal potential cognacy relations, right, that the linguist can then evaluate qualitatively later on. So what do we do next? We want to replicate these results in a different language families. So if we look at, for example, Balto-Slavic noun declension, is it the case that we find that languages that are closer related to each other also have preserved this closer genetic affinity in a closer profile according to this different entropy or predictability metrics? And if we do replicate the results that we found here in Romance, can we apply this to cases like the one I just showed, right, where the jury is still out as for what the right cognacy relations are? Or can we apply it in cases of languages which we are not completely sure whether they are genetically related or not? For example, in Northern Australia, in the Arnhem land, there is a lot of languages that have inflection class systems based on tense aspect mood suffixes, and there is disagreement which of these languages are genetically related or not. We believe that if these entropy or predictability metrics do keep some strong phylogenetic signal, then they could be used in this type of debates. And that's all. Thank you very much.